Daily Dose, Martin Luther's 95 Thesis. Shunning his wealthy father's desire for his son to study law, as an undergraduate at the University of Erfurt, Germany's premier university at the time, Martin Luther experienced a violent lightning strike that nearly killed him on the spot. Considering the incident a sign from God, in the summer of 1505, Martin Luther entered an Augustinian monastery, where his biblical studies soon placed him at odds with the Catholic Church, which taught that salvation could be attained through works of righteousness, while Luther, like Augustine before him, believed that salvation came solely through faith, and by nothing more than divine grace. Committed to his belief in the primacy of the Bible, Luther vigorously objected against the Catholic Church's corrupt practice of selling indulgences, which were monetary payments to church officials that supposedly absolved a person of their sins, or released one's soul from purgatory after death. In response, Luther wrote the Disputation on the Power and Efficacy of Indulgences, also known as the 95 Thesis, nailing or hanging his list of debate questions on the main entry door to the Wittenberg Castle Church, announcing his intention to hold an academic debate on 95 non-accusatory questions concerning theology and Christian belief, including his central ideas that God favors repentance from believers, and that faith alone would lead a believer to salvation through Christ. Luther's 95 Thesis quickly circulated throughout Germany and beyond, and when Luther was summoned to Augsburg in 1518 to defend his opinions before an imperial Catholic assembly, when church officials supported the use of indulgences, Luther refused to recant his beliefs, which in turn led Pope Leo X to issue a papal bull in the summer of 1520, condemning Luther's beliefs as heretical. When Luther refused to recant after a second warning, on January 3, 1521, Pope Leo excommunicated Luther from the Catholic Church. In May of that same year, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V signed an edict against Luther, ordering his writings to be burned. Despite pushback by the Catholic Church, as other religious and political leaders supported Luther's doctrinal beliefs, the Protestant Reformation spread rapidly throughout Germany and Western Europe, leading to the birth of Christian denominations that forever changed practices and beliefs throughout the Christian world. The Dancing Plague of 1518. The 3-month-long hysteria began on July 14, 1518, when Frau Trophia walked out of her Strasbourg home to throw down some original dance moves for her immediately infected neighbors, which she kept up without pause or sleep for the next 6 days. By the end of Strasbourg's first month of nonstop dancing, nearly 400 people danced behind Frau Trophia to the point of exhaustion and collapse. Called St. John's Dance at the time, the disease quickly spread up and down the Rhine River, including cities such as Liege, Utrecht, and Tongres, as well as other cities in the Netherlands and Belgium. That the event took place is undisputed, says historian John Waller, whose enticing book A Time to Dance, A Time to Die was published in 2008 based on research supported by historical records of the dancing plague, including physician notes, cathedral sermons, as well as local and regional chronicles describing the mass outbreak of dancing. Back in Strasbourg, head-scratched town officials tried to contain the now citywide dance fever by hiring musicians to perform before a hastily constructed and quite massive stage, which ultimately had the opposite effect of prompting more townspeople to join in on the communal hysteria. Modern experts remain mixed regarding what caused the outbreak of marathon dancing, although some historians have suggested that hallucinatory ergot was to blame, which is a mold that grows on stalks of damp rye wheat that can be unwittingly baked into loaves of bread. Still others believe the mass dance outbreak was caused by extreme psychological duress, while a third camp points the finger at a secret religious cult. 2 years after the dance frenzy had ended, humanist Hieronymus Gibweiler described the dance plague as God's way of forcing modesty and moderation upon the city of Strasbourg. And while the dance plague ended just as quickly as it had arrived, dozens of danced-out people in Strasbourg and beyond had died from heart attacks, strokes, and sheer exhaustion. Raphael. Born Raffaello Sanzio in 1483 Urbino, Italy, Raphael's father taught him basic painting techniques and the principles of humanistic philosophy in the Duke of Urbino's court. And when his father died suddenly, when Raphael was just 11 years old, he soon rose in stature to be considered one of the finest painters in a town already brimming with master artists. Beginning a 4-year apprenticeship under Perugino, as a teenager, Raphael developed his own unique painting style, as witnessed in such early works as his 1502 Mon Crucifixion, his 1503 The Three Graces, and his 1504 Marriage of the Virgin. Moving to Florence that same year, Raphael's later art would be heavily influenced by the work of Fra Bartolomeo, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Masaccio, producing an intricate, expressive style absent in his earlier paintings. Producing a series of Madonnas over the next 3 years, his experimentation and growth as an artist culminated in works such as La Belle Jardinière and The Entombment, before moving to Rome in 1508 to paint in the Vatican Stanzi and Stanza del Signatura rooms under the patronage of Pope Julius II, producing a series of some of the most highly regarded frescoes of the Italian High Renaissance. During the same period, Raphael also produced his famed Madonna of the Chair and Sistine Madonna, and as his reputation and finances grew under his driven ambition, Raphael was able to hire a crew of assistants to finish his frescoes, allowing him to focus on other projects, including his impressive achievements as an architect. After famed architect Donato Bramante died in 1514, Pope Leo X hired Raphael as his chief architect, where Raphael designed the chapel of Santa Eligio degli Orfici, Rome's Santa Maria del Popolo chapel, and an interior space inside St. Peter's new basilica. He also took on secular architectural projects, which helped define the architectural styles of the late Renaissance and early Baroque periods. Passing away on his 37th birthday from mysterious causes, when his funeral mass was held at the Vatican, his unfinished Transfiguration was placed on his coffin stand before his body was interred at the Pantheon in Rome. Today, Raphael continues to be celebrated for his balanced and harmonious compositions, making Raphael a leading figure of the Italian Renaissance. The Italian Renaissance. Toward the end of the 14th century, Italian intellectuals began to declare that Italy and much of Europe had transitioned into a new age of human awareness. Gone were the brutish and unenlightened Middle Ages, replaced by a period of rebirth and growth in literature, art, culture, and science. Spanning into the 17th century, during the period, Renaissance thinkers shared a common theme book, most notably a new humanistic belief that man was at the center of his own universe. 15th century Italy was unique to Europe, with each city-state practicing its own and quite diverse forms of government. Considered the birthplace of the Italian Renaissance, Florence was an independent republic whose merchants and banking interests were third in Europe behind London and Constantinople. Wealthy Florentine businessmen gave financial support to artists and intellectuals, which allowed their recipients to create new art and ideas without the pressing need for ordinary employment. They traveled around Italy and the continent, finding new appreciation in ancient Greek and Roman texts, all the while shunning the Holy Roman Church in exchange for humanism. Many focused their energies on the laws of nature and the physical world around them, prompting artists such as Leonardo da Vinci to create detailed scientific studies on such diverse subjects as flying machines, submarines, and human anatomy. During the Renaissance, scientist and mathematician Galileo studied a broad range of subjects, from gravity to astronomy, discovering that the Earth and other planets in the solar system circled the Sun rather than the Earth-centric model preached by the Catholic Church. For his heresy against the teachings of Christianity, Galileo was arrested under threat of torture and death, yet he refused to recant or give in to the Church's dogmatic misconceptions. When Galileo died in 1641, he was still under house arrest, not to be pardoned by the Catholic Church until 1992. Nearing the end of the 15th century, Italy was besieged by a steady procession of wars, as England, France, Spain, and the Holy Roman Emperor vied for control of the wealthy peninsula. At the same time, the Catholic Church became mired in scandal and corruption, diverting public attention to its misdeeds with a long and violent crackdown on religious dissenters. In 1545, the Council of Trent officially imposed the Roman Inquisition, which increased the prosecution of heretics while bringing about an abrupt end to humanism and the Italian Renaissance. The House of Medici. After the Medicis emigrated to Florence in the 12th century, rising to preeminence through banking and commerce, the family fell into decline by the 14th century when Salvestro de' Medici was forced into exile. The dynasty made a comeback through another branch of the family, descended from Salvestro's distant cousin Giovanni de' Medici, known as Cosimo the Elder, who rose to political power in 1434 to rule Florence as an uncrowned king until his death in 1464. A wealthy and devoted patron of the arts, Cosimo supported such artists as Ghiberti, Brunelleschi, and Donatello. Cosimo's patronage of the arts would be carried on by his son, and particularly his grandson, Lorenzo the Magnificent, elevating Florence into the cultural heart of Europe during the ascending years of the Renaissance. A poet himself, Lorenzo's rule ushered in the golden age of Florence when he supported such influential artists as Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo. After passing away at the tender age of 43, Lorenzo's eldest son Piero rose to power in Florence, which led to the family's second exile after he accepted a one-sided peace treaty with France. The Medicis returned to the city in 1512, thanks to Piero's younger brother Giovanni, who was a powerful cardinal at the time and would later become Pope Leo X. Giovanni's rise to power marked the high point of the Medici's influence in Europe, while continuing his father's patronage of the humanities. Piero's son Lorenzo also regained power in Florence, while his daughter Catherine became Queen of France after marrying King Henry II. 3 of Catherine's 4 sons would later become kings of France. By the early 1520s, the House of Medici fell into decline until Lorenzo the Elder launched a third Medici comeback. Lorenzo's great-great-grandson Cosimo became the Duke of Florence in 1537, followed by Grand Duke of Tuscany in 1569, setting in motion a succession of Medici Grand Dukes that would continue into the 1700s. The last lines of the Medici family renounced the older generation's Republican sympathies, embracing a form of authoritarian rule which brought increased stability to Florence, but also led to the city's decline as the cultural hub of Europe. When Grand Duke Gastone de' Medici died without a male heir in 1737, the family dynasty ended with his passing, ushering in the long reign of the Habsburg-Lorraine family. Bloody Mary. The sole surviving child of Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine of Aragon, Henry claimed that Mary I was not of his issue after his remarriage to Anne Boleyn, and while Mary was removed from succession to the throne, she was eventually reinstated in 1543 by both Henry's will and a parliamentary law called the Third Act of Succession. When Mary's half-brother Edward assumed the throne at the tender age of 9, Edward, like his now-dead father, wrote Mary out of succession to the throne, naming his Protestant cousin Lady Jane Grey as next in line to be queen. In what many historians believe to be a brilliant coup d'etat of political survival, after Edward's untimely death, Mary ascended to the throne as the first non-consort queen of England. A devout Catholic despite her father's Protestant reforms, Mary reverted the nation back to Catholicism, restoring papal supremacy while reinstating Roman Catholic bishops. She also revived old heresy laws to solidify her religious reconversion of England, earning her nickname Bloody Mary when she ordered nearly 300 alleged heretics burned at the stake. The fourth royal in the line of Tudor succession, at age 37, Mary wed Philip of Spain in 1554, primarily to produce an heir that would prevent her Protestant half-sister Elizabeth from succeeding her to the throne. That same year, Mary faced a Protestant rebellion led by landowner Thomas Wyatt, who was later executed at Tower Hill, while Mary's half-sister Elizabeth was imprisoned at the Tower of London for her alleged involvement in Wyatt's plot. On April 30th, 1555, celebrations broke out throughout London on reports that Mary had given birth to a healthy son. The rapidly spreading rumor proved false, while Mary's apparent infertile condition later inspired Philip to live a carefree life in various destinations around Europe. During Mary's 5-year reign, she successfully restructured the British economy, revitalized the navy, reorganized the militia, and adroitly managed Parliament, at the same time ensuring that the crown would continue along the legal line of Tudor succession. She passed away on November 17, 1558, most likely from cancer, which made her half-sister Elizabeth the new Queen of England, making the short life of Bloody Mary a reign of terror for British Protestants everywhere. Francis Bacon. Born into an aristocratic family in 1561 London, England, Francis Bacon attended Trinity College, Cambridge at the tender age of 12, graduating in 2 years before enrolling in Gray's Inn Law School, which initially bored him to tears. Suffering from insufficient finances and heavy debt for the entirety of his life, by age 20, Bacon landed a job in the House of Commons, which allowed him to complete his law degree at Gray's Inn. Appointed outer barrister in 1582, 2 years later, his political career galvanized when he wrote a letter of advice to Queen Elizabeth, propelling him into a 4-decade career in Parliament. Knighted by King James I in 1603, Bacon became Solicitor General in 1607, followed by Attorney General, a member of the Privy Council, Lord Keeper of the Great Seal, and ultimately Lord Chancellor, one of the highest political offices in Great Britain. Appointed Viscount St. Albans in 1621, his political enemies in Parliament accused Bacon of accepting bribes, leading to his trial and conviction that same year. Fined £40,000, Bacon served 4 days in the Tower of London before retiring from public life in ill health, focusing the remainder of his life on his other passion, scientific discovery. Now known as the father of empiricism, Bacon shunned the long-standing scientific doctrines of Aristotle and Plato, developing a new model for applied science that focused on tangible evidence based on experimentation, the analysis of gathered data, and the reproducibility of results. Believing since childhood that science could be harnessed as a tool for the betterment of mankind, Bacon proposed the notion that all the mysteries of the known universe could be solved through examined experimentation, claiming that his empirical scientific method would, in his words, eventually disclose and bring into sight all that is hidden and secret in the universe. Publishing Book 1 of Novum Organum Scientiarum, or the New Method, in 1620, Bacon introduced new terminology into scientific study, including the table of presence, the table of absence and proximity, the table of comparison, and the ladder of axioms, establishing himself as a leading figure in the philosophy of science, at the same time publishing a wide range of essays and a work of utopian fiction. He passed away from pneumonia on April 9, 1626, after studying the effects of ice on the preservation and decay of meats, making Sir Francis Bacon a groundbreaking pioneer in the birth of modern science. William Shakespeare. Born in 1564, Stratford-upon-Avon, a bustling market town some 4 days' ride from London, much of William Shakespeare's early life remains an undocumented mystery until November 28, 1582, when Shakespeare wed his pregnant girlfriend, Anne Hathaway, who was 8 years his senior. While scholars can only speculate regarding his activities during his lost years, from 1585 to 1591, records indicate that he was employed as a London actor and aspiring playwright in 1592, at the same time writing and publishing 2 lengthy poems under the patronage of the Earl of Southampton, during a period when London theaters were shuttered due to an outbreak of plague. By the time of his death, his most celebrated poems include his book of 154 sonnets, which were published as a collection in 1609. A mainstay in London's acclaimed acting company, Lord Chamberlain's Men, later known as the Kingsmen, Shakespeare transitioned from actor to playwright, which allowed him to amass a considerable fortune by 1587, when he purchased one of the largest homes in Stratford, known as New Place. Gaining the patronage of Queen Elizabeth I and later King James I, by 1599, Shakespeare and several fellow actors built London's Globe Theatre along the banks of the Thames, which proved to be yet another financial boon for the most famous bard in English history. Of his 37 known plays, Shakespeare focused on 3 main themes: history, tragedy, and comedy, infusing elements in each genre that appealed to both highbrow and lowbrow alike. Of his history plays, Henry V, Richard II, and Henry VI dramatized the destructive outcomes of weak or corrupt rulers, while his tragedies include Romeo and Juliet, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, Julius Caesar, and Hamlet, each portraying timeless insights into the universal temperaments of man. Of his comedies, his most beloved include The Taming of the Shrew, the whimsical A Midsummer Night's Dream, the romantic Merchant of Venice, and the witty wordplays of Much Ado About Nothing. In his later years, Shakespeare became a wealthy landowner in Stratford before passing away at age 52 on April 23, 1616, the exact same day of his birth, making the life and works of William Shakespeare one of the most beloved writers in the history of English literature. The Gunpowder Plot. Remember, remember, the 5th of November, begins the British folk verse, the gunpowder, treason, and plot. The source of the ditty and the annual British celebration of Guy Fawkes, or Bonfire Night, harkens back to November 5th, 1605, when a group of Catholic conspirators attempted to eradicate England's Protestant-led government by blowing up the House of Lords. As the legend goes, parliamentarian Lord Monteagle, the brother-in-law to one of the conspirators, received an anonymous letter advising him not to attend the November 5th opening session of Parliament, and when he alerted authorities, royal officials Sir Thomas Nevid and Edward Doubleday found Guy Fawkes hiding in a basement under the Parliament building. A brief search ensued, resulting in the discovery of 36 barrels of gunpowder. Now known as the Gunpowder Plot, Fawkes was tortured without mercy until he revealed the names of his co-conspirators, including organizer Robert Catesby, an English Catholic whose father had been persecuted by Queen Elizabeth I for refusing to conform to the Protestant Church of England. As Fawkes continued to rat out his co-conspirators, the police learned that the plotters had rented a nearby cellar that extended under the House of Lords building, where they had hoped to plunge dead legislators onto its earthen floor. Over the next several weeks, Fawkes's co-conspirators were killed or captured, followed by hasty trials for the survivors, who were sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. On November 31st, 1606, as he ascended the gallows for his execution, Fawkes jumped headlong from the ladder, where he broke his neck and died. Shortly after his passing, Parliament extended repressive restrictions on the nation's rebel Catholics, including the elimination of the right of Catholic men to vote. Parliament then established November 5th as a day of public thanksgiving, leading to the annual British tradition of Guy Fawkes Night, where English revelers indulge in an evening of pyrotechnic gluttony, setting off fireworks and burning effigies of Fawkes, in a noisy celebration that, at least in London anyway, still rattles the nerves of World War II senior citizens who survived Germany's near nightly bombing raids on the city. Today on the Daily Dose, Rene Descartes. Born in 1596 Central France, Rene Descartes' mother died in childbirth when Descartes was a little more than a year old, living with relatives after his father remarried. Attending Jesuit college at 8 years of age, Descartes earned his law degree when he was 22, although his true passions and future fame, as what many have called the father of modern philosophy, came from his attempts to apply mathematics and logic to man's greater understanding of the nature of existence and human knowledge, leading to his famous observation as written in his 1637 publication of Discourse on the Method, I think, therefore I am. Lauded as an original thinker in science, mathematics, and metaphysics during the European Renaissance, Descartes accredited a series of visions as a sign from God to engage in a new philosophy aimed at melding the truths of religion with science, where he argued that true knowledge comes from doubting everything that can be doubted, including one's own existence, at the same time deducing that the world and humankind were composed of both matter and the mind, arguing that matter is extended and divisible, while the mind is indivisible and non-extended, a view now known as mind-body dualism. Employing mathematics as a means of thoroughly examining his doubts, Descartes developed analytic geometry by merging together the previously separate fields of algebra and geometry, while contributing greatly to the study of optics in his landmark examination of the law of refraction. Considered one of the most influential thinkers in Western philosophy and science, Descartes' emphasis on the pursuit of truth through reason and methodical doubt laid an early foundation for the scientific method, while his concept of mind-body dualism heavily influenced future developments in neuroscience and human psychology. Despite his stature as a seminal philosopher, Descartes has also drawn criticism that his mind-body dualism principle is incompatible with modern scientific methods, while his emphasis on doubt has been labeled so overly skeptical as to lead to solipsism, which is the belief that one's own mind is the only thing that can be known with any certainty, making Rene Descartes a groundbreaking progenitor to the scientific revolution to come. And there you have it, Rene Descartes, today in the Daily Dose. If you enjoyed this short educational video, consider giving the filmmakers a YouTube super thanks from as little as $1, so that you too can feed the filmmakers who feed your brain.